Welcome to the Time Machine. Experience the cancer journey through the eyes of the traveler. Cindy Reid, welcome to the Time Machine. Excited to have you. Been looking forward to this being the way we met, and we'll get into that in a moment because the way we met was very special to me. And but before we do that, I'd love to start with your story, from diagnosis, and we can dive in right there, and would love to walk this journey with you.
Okay, very good. My name's Cindy Reid. I live in Miles City. I'm married and I have 4 children. In April of 2010, I was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia, AML, and began treatments within 1 week at St. Vincent's Hospital in Billings. My type of cancer required seclusion because the chemotherapy depleted my immune system such that I needed to stay at the hospital. So I spent 2 months in a room in the Fortin ward at St. Vincent's Hospital doing several kinds of chemotherapy. I want to backtrack just a little bit. When I was diagnosed, I had spent about 3 months not feeling very well. I was an active person. I ran, I coached, I worked, I had kids, and I kept having these breathing issues. Like I felt like I had no energy. I'd try to go for a run with my running partner, and I could go 2 minutes, and I'd have to stop and sit down. And I kept thinking, what's wrong with me? I'd go to the doctors, and they'd try to give me something for sinus infections or inhalers or things like that. And finally got to the point where I collapsed at my home at my father-in-law's wake, trying to go up the stairs. And my daughter, who's a nurse, took me to the ER, and she wouldn't let them dismiss me until they did blood work and an x-ray and a few other things. And the blood work came back with all of the numbers that indicate some kind of leukemia. And they did a bone marrow biopsy right away and put me in the hospital and gave me a blood transfusion and perked me up for a few days. And then the following Wednesday, that was on a Saturday, the following Wednesday, I met with the doctor and he gave me the diagnosis. And I remember the pained look in his face when he was telling me that I had leukemia. And I just looked at him and I said, oh, thank goodness I know what's wrong. What do we do now? So, while it was daunting, I remember thinking, okay, let's fix this. And that truly was my initial reaction. I think everyone else melted down and I was going, okay, what do we do?
Yeah.
Let's go,
Yeah.
So we jumped right into the therapy. Had great care at St. Vincent's. My daughter worked there at the time as an RN in the ICU, so I had someone watching out for me, and she had lots of co-workers who watched out for me. I was not just Cindy in room 316, I was Lacey's mom. So
nice.
Wonderful care. 2 months of chemotherapy. They were not getting the blood counts down to the percent they wanted to feel comfortable with a stem cell transplant. So last ditch effort, they tried a pediatric chemotherapy, and it dropped it right down to the highest level that they would allow the transplant. I was very fortunate to have a brother who was a 99.5% match on the DNA and all the blood markers and everything. And so then I was sent to Denver for another round of chemotherapy and then total body irradiation. The purpose of that was to kill all of my own stem cells. And then they did the transplant, which in the past used to be physically pulling bone marrow out of a person's long bone in their leg and then injecting it back into the recipient. They since developed a sort of dialysis type of thing where they run your blood through a system and filter out all the stem cells. The donor sits there for like 4 hours, watches movies. They run his blood through, circulate it, gather all the stem cells. And then the transplant happens with an injection. And then I spent 100 days after that transplant recovering from all the processes involved prior to the transplant, and then what they call graft versus host disease, which is what happens when the body is introduced to a foreign object, any kind of transplant, whether it's blood-borne, organs, kidney, anything. There's going to be a graft versus host disease. In spite of the fact that my immune system wasn't working, it would still attack anything that's foreign. And that was my brother's stem cells. So that first 100-day period is called acute GVHD. And it was pretty rocky for about a month and a half. And I ended up getting delayed, so I was there probably 120 days before I got home. So it was nearly December before I got home from Denver. The last few weeks I was able to be out of the hospital and live in a hotel room, and then people would come stay with me intermittently. My husband would come for a week, a friend, a sister, a daughter, because we had a son still in high school. He was a sophomore in high school when this was going on, and 3 girls in college. And so he would drive back and forth and go to Dalton's basketball games and football games and things like that. And then when he couldn't be there, people would come and stay with me because I had to have someone with me all the time, get me to appointments. I'd have to go in every day for blood work, and then 3 times a week, and then twice a week. So long process. I've had varying manifestations of graft versus host disease in the last 9, nearly 10 years now. It first attacked my intestines, and I had to be on supplemental feeding through a port because I couldn't eat. I was having diarrhea and vomiting issues and all kinds of things. And we got that resolved. Then it moved into my eyes. I got cataracts. I don't produce any tears at all, so I have a regimen of about 9 different eye drops that I take. It's affected my skin. I have no oil in my skin anymore. Dry mouth. It's also, and not so much the GVHD, but the radiation and the chemo have caused osteonecrosis in several of my joints. I've had a knee replacement. I have an ankle that needs to be replaced. And I'm pretty sure my hips are going next. And also I have some in my jaw now. But I've managed to, get through that. You can walk differently and change your activity level and do what you need to do. But the most recent and most devastating occurrence has been GVHD of the lungs. So over the past 2 years, I've had pneumonia 6 times.
Wow. Some
stretches 9 days in the hospital. I've been treating this last batch for a month. I did it at home, much to my husband's chagrin, because I did not want to be in the hospital. So I think the recovery is the same. It just took longer.
Yes.
But so I am 9 years out from leukemia. When I did the transplant, they didn't talk about graft versus host disease. They were just trying to cure leukemia. And they told me if I made 5 years, that the likelihood of having a recurrence of the AML was minimal, like 0.5%. I am 9, nearly 10 years, and I've had no recurrence of leukemia.
That's fantastic.
And so probably never will. It's just the graft versus host disease that I have to survive now.
Yeah. So on to a new battle.
Yes. And every day, I think, is an experiment for not only me, but all my physicians. Because each person's body reacts differently. You never know what system the graft versus host is going to attack. I've had a wonderful set of physicians taking care of me in this area, in combination with the Colorado Blood Cancer Institute in Denver. But I am to the point where I'm beyond any of their expertise here. Their job was to cure leukemia or help my lungs, but they don't know about GVHD. That's not their specialty. So my next step is to go to Denver and have a consult with a pulmonologist there. And then I'm looking for referrals to Stanford and University of California, San Francisco, who both have lung transplant facilities. Because they say if we can't, it's likely we cannot reverse the damage in your lungs. Graft versus host manifests in inflammation in whatever system it's in. That's how your body gets rid of bugs. You know, you throw a bunch of blood there and it gets all inflamed and they kill the bugs. Well, these are not bugs. These are me. So all of the tiny bronchial airways are being inflamed and then restricting my airflow so that my lung function keeps decreasing. So we don't know if that can be regained. We don't know if we can stop the GVHD and maintain where I am now. We don't even know if I'm a candidate for a lung transplant. But that's the direction they're looking at right now.
That's a lot.
It is a lot.
And with a smile on your face and the
I'll tell you what, I am a tenacious, stubborn, and very faithful person. And I have a lot of people that I love very much. And I guess I'm still here because I'm supposed to be doing things for them. And that's what led us to Wake Up and Lace Up. Rosa Neese, my co-founder, was a 4-time cancer survivor. But the 5th time, she didn't survive. She was tougher than nails as well. And so much fun. And we got together and said, you know, this is awful. I mean, even when you have health insurance, the money that it takes to travel and get treatment, cover your bills when you're not working, you know, just to pay for hotels and lodging. Because when you live in a remote area like eastern Montana, the minimum distance you're going to drive for treatment is 150 miles. If you have to go to Rochester, Denver, Seattle, anywhere like that, you can spend $1,000 in one trip. So we started this organization. The name came from my mantra when I was in the hospital at St. Vincent's. I got up every morning and I took a shower and I put on my running clothes and my tennis shoes and I sat on the edge of the bed and I said, okay, what are we doing today? And then when they were done with it, I would take my IV pole when I could get unhooked from something and would walk laps around the hall. I would do a mile every day. It took a lot of laps to walk a mile on 3 floors.
Yes.
But it's just wake up and lace up. What do we got to do? And so we started with this crazy idea of auctioning off people's hair. And we had this great guy, Morris Bartholomew, who's just a man beast. He's a lovely, lovely man. But he can grow hair better than a werewolf. And at his last offering of hair, he finally confessed that he actually took prenatal vitamins as he was preparing for the auctions each time. And he had a huge family and a huge following. He was in the trucking business. And it just took off. And here we are. We started in 2011. And on March 7th, we're going to be in our ninth event. And then we have art that we auction off and silent auction baskets and kids' tables and dessert tables. And
yes, this is, and if I can interject for a moment, this is how we met.
This is how we met.
Yeah, so I, point of contact, our company, my wife and I were in Miles City for that event, and I had met buddy niece, and he had talked about how he was auctioning off his hair, so we came and we filmed and did interviews with him and promoted the event through what he was doing there, and then got to meet you. And I took my kids with, and I think Josiah must have been 3 at the time, Tristan 6, and Gideon 7, and they got that feel of Miles City and what small town community is all about, and they got to run around, and there were so many people involved in the event. I was blown away, and I was so excited to be a part of it, and was so moved by it, and did not know at the time, because what really I thought was so special was how the community came together, and how those that are walking that cancer journey come together, and the family that comes around them. And at the time, I just was unaware that I was undiagnosed with MDS, with a blood cancer that's under that same umbrella as leukemia, and was unaware of it at the time, and was diagnosed not too long after that, after we had done that event. And so that's how we met. And my daughter was really moved by the young girl that cut her hair.
It was a mother-daughter combination. That was Amy Tuke and her daughter Greta. Yeah. And then sympathy becomes empathy, because you're in the journey. And it's in a totally different perspective.
When you first started your journey, how did that shift for you? I mean, you've already mentioned you just went right after it, but maybe could you speak on the mindset of how that shifted from being in an exclusive club that we are now card-carrying members?
The things that come to mind, and I ironically call them the blessings of cancer, I was a very able-bodied person. I was athletic, I was fit, I was slim, could do anything I wanted, I was strong, I coached, I worked, I had 4 kids, I'm just going all the time. And it was hard to have empathy for people who didn't have that kind of energy or had chronic illness. Not that I didn't feel badly for them, but every step along the way you're thinking, oh my gosh, I can't imagine. I mean, like someone with cystic fibrosis. There is no good thing at the end except a lung transplant. Even someone with COPD, someone with rheumatoid arthritis, all of these chronic conditions that people who don't suffer from them, they say, yeah, that's too bad. But then you experience part of it in whatever form or degree, and you start thinking, everyone has a cross to bear, and they're doing the best they can, and they all need help. It's taught me patience. It's trying to teach me that I'm not in charge, but I have to be reminded every once in a while. And this last bout of pneumonia, I'm laying in the bed thinking, this is God telling me to sit down. Sit down and heal. You have got to let all that go. Be in the moment. I was so worried about Christmas because we were having everyone come home. I'm thinking, how am I going to do dinner? I can't get my presents wrapped, blah, blah, blah. My children, my neighbors came over and put up my tree before they left for the winter. My children cooked a fantastic meal. My son-in-law made a roast beef. Kids made salads. They waited on me hand and foot. I had shopped, but they got all the presents wrapped. And I just sat there and got to enjoy the moment instead of being so wrapped up in the logistics of it. And it was so freeing. It really was. I had a brother come up from Texas for a few days. I just dropped off my brother from Missouri who came out for a few days. They came and just did things for me and wanted to spend time with me. I need to sit down.
Had you ever in your past before then ever sat down and allowed people to do those type of things for you?
No, I'm a very independent person. I don't want to be a burden on anyone. I try to be organized. I try not to be controlling, but I'm very I'm very specific about how I like things done, And I've got to let that go too. It doesn't matter which way the towels are folded, as long as they're clean. And every day it just has to be pounded into you. But every day there's beauty. And there's people that need your inspiration. I just, and the generosity of our community, probably all over this state, but particularly where we live, is so compelling. They've been supporting this organization for 9 years. We've helped 343 people and given out over $220,000 to folks. We are a completely nonprofit, non-paid board. And we have a hair and art auction. We get money from memorials. If you need the money, we send it to you. There's no long, arduous process. You fill out an application form. I send an email to my board members. As long as you meet our criteria, here's the money.
We know that because when we were diagnosed, we had a trip to Seattle, and we contacted Wake Up Lace Up, and I think we're a little bit out of your area, and you still helped us because we're really South Central, not Eastern, and I want you to know this.
But you were a catalyst in a very successful fundraising event in your promotion of Buddy Knees. And I just felt that it was important that you got to feel part of that love.
We felt it. And we felt it before we ever received a check or even knew we were diagnosed. And then once we were, the relief of those things that are of
little
travel and hotel and all those as you're juggling
things. It's not
things.
a huge amount of money, but it's just some money that you didn't have to worry about.
Yeah.
And if it gets worse, there's more money that you don't have to worry about. And so that was Rosa and I's goal, is to alleviate the stressors of things that prevent you from focusing on healing and getting better, and stressors to your family.
Absolutely. I can speak to that because we've had a community here with our church family, our friends, other communities we've been involved in throughout the years.
People come out of the woodwork to support you. It's mind-boggling. Yeah. You're so humbled.
Yep. And it's an interesting thing because I've always been resilient and been able to do things and to be able to
we got this.
Yeah.
I got this. Yeah.
And to be able to sit and allow people to give is such
it's a gift to them.
It is.
And we're denying people when we don't do that.
Yep, I agree with that. And it's humbling, and it's a beautiful thing to see people come together and use their gifts and all the different resources to help. It's a beautiful world we live in.
Yes, it is. And
I've
never once had, more than often I have people say, thank you for calling me. I've wanted to be involved, but I just didn't know how. And if you just call them, they're so happy to do it, and they feel so involved. I helped. You made a pie for our dessert table. You brought a little basket. They participated.
Yes.
And we try to keep it from the $5 people to the $10,000 people. Yep. They're all the same family.
Yep.
And that's how Miles City is. I mean, it's just, that's where our community is. And we need to reach out to more of the communities that we help. Because I've had some health issues, I haven't been able to do that. But we'd really like to expand into some of those communities for fundraising, because we help in Sydney and Glendive and Colstrip and Webo and Baker and all those places. And so
we should talk after this about that, because I would love to be able to help in ways, because I have a heart for that, and would love to partner with you if there's ways we can help.
Yeah.
Yes. It's the community in Miles City and what we saw there was it was just a beautiful moment, and to be there with my kids, and again, pre-diagnosis, and to be able to see all those people coming together, a fantastic event. And so you have your 9th event coming up.
Correct, on March 7th.
March 7th. And is there anything you'd like to maybe mention about that?
Well, we have a grandfather granddaughter combination for our hair donors.
Oh, awesome!
Bing Cherry and his granddaughter, and I believe her name is Cora. Can't think of it right now, but he has had a beard since he graduated from high school. He grows his hair quickly. He's in his late 60s, but he's I better be careful. I think it's mid 60s.
Say mid 50s.
Mid 60s. I know that. But he's willing to go all the way to the scalp.
Oh, wow.
And then his granddaughter has long brunette locks. And they're going to do it as a combination. And then we're hoping to have one of Rosa Niece's nephews come down and do it. And then we will have our usual fare of, I call it rotating art.
Mm-hmm.
People bring us art, we auction it off, baskets. We have a kids table where we sell toys. We have a ring game where you buy a little ring for $10 and you win a special piece of jewelry. Dessert auction. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, we're going to be at the Town and Country Club this year.
Okay.
And our theme is going to coordinate with the Summer Olympics.
I
and
love
maybe,
it.
Going for the gold or something like
it.
that. So
I love it. Well, I'm excited for that event, and hopefully, we can come be a part of that
would be
again,
wonderful.
because I just had such a great time the first time. I want to ask you this. You mentioned sit down, and sometimes you need to rest. What are some of the things? Because I'm inspired by you. 9 years, on this journey for someone that's, I think it was last August. So we're veterans as far as infusions and those things go. We've had 119. I'll have my 4th bone marrow biopsy here soon. Yep. And so a veteran
in those.
I think my hips
probably look like Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
I think I had 9 before I was done.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yes. Those are interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, we might have to talk about that too. Those are fun. But relatively new as far as, when we're talking about 9 years, it's a long time. And so what is, interesting to me is what are some things that, throughout your journey you think are essential for somebody on the journey to be able to do for self-care?
Be very aware of your health situation. You need to manage your own care. You need to know your medications. You need to know what they're for. You need to take them appropriately. And you need to question them if you don't feel like they're doing their job, or if the side effects are greater than the relief they're intended to provide. Very important. If you're not able to do that yourself, you need an advocate. You need someone who can keep track of that. I'm an accountant, so I'm a very detailed person. And I log every day how I feel, what drugs I took. I've always been a relatively healthy eater. I try to continue to eat healthy. I have issues with weight loss. The immunosuppressant drugs that they have me on increase my metabolism. So my heart rate's like at 120 when I'm sitting here talking to you. So it's like I'm going for a run while I'm talking to you.
Wow.
But my weight was mostly based on muscle mass. And throughout that initial chemo, radiation, and the transplant, I went from 120 pounds to 93. Over the course of the years, I've been able to get up to like 112, 115. But the last 2 years with the pneumonia and everything, I'm back down to around 90, 93. So nutrition is extremely important. Even when you don't feel like eating, you've got to try to eat things that will supplement you properly. And you talked about juicing. I haven't gotten into that, but I try to pay attention to proteins. And because of my dry mouth and the intestinal things that I've had, when I take a bite of food, I have to have a drink. So I can get through half a meal and then I'm full because I've had this much water and this much food. So I have to eat like an infant about every 4 hours. And if you get distracted and don't do that, and your energy runs low, that's detrimental. Trying to keep your sleep schedule, but if you're on prednisone for inflammation, you can't sleep. Your body, I can lay down and rest. I can lay in bed for 4 hours, but my mind is changing the world. I'm rearranging the furniture and moving things and buying stuff.
Yes.
You know, my head's always going. Surround yourself with positive people. There are plenty of people that will support you. I believe that your faith is extremely important. How you feel about who is watching over you. And that if you're still here, you have a purpose. And I guess that's why I'm still here.
Yes, so much wisdom there, and you know, one of the, I think the huge values of a conversation like this, so there's so many people that will hear this that are in the beginning of their journey, and you know, we just, when we started, we didn't have a game plan. We just were able to bring a lot of stuff that we already had as far as the way we took care of ourselves health-wise. Luckily, we had all of those things
already
in line. So, it's, you know, we were very, very big with nutrition, with supplementation, with what we, you know, with rest and with, you know, exercise and the things that I do to stay healthy, surrounding myself with the right people. Like we did add the juicing in, and I would highly recommend Well Paired here in town. I would give you some, but I go through 200 ounces.
No, I will check it out.
A week from there, but I just ended it last night, so we have some. I need to go get some more. But they, Well Paired is a fantastic place, especially if you're visiting, you know, and you're at the clinic. They're right downtown, but a great way to get nutrition in your body. We have a lot of things that, you know, we do. Faith is massively important because for me, that's been just a, you know, the foundation and grounding force that's made it, you know, I see, because of that, I see this as a gift. I see, and I'm very, you know, specific when I say that, because I understand that can be offensive to some people, because to me, cancer has been a gift for reasons that, you know, all the things we've mentioned that I've been able to see, and the things I've been involved with community, and there's been so many blessings in it. Now, of course, we are walking the tightrope. We know that time can be short, and we know, you know, I have three young ones.
Very young children.
They're sick, you know, are 5, 8, and 9 right now. So of course, I'd like to be here for that and know that, you know, we're not certain of tomorrow. So there's, so what I tried to focus on was staying healthy in the ways that I could.
Exactly.
And so that was, you know, with my mindset, the way I would, you know, would process things, the people I surround myself with, and the things that, you know, I'm involved in. And so all those things you mentioned have been things that we have been able to step into. And I know, like I said, we didn't have a roadmap. You know, we just kind of, you know,
you're thrown on the highway.
Yeah.
Keep up.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, again, the wisdom that you provide with 9 years on this journey can help so many. And you help so many people already in all the things you do. But I've noticed that and thought there's a lot of things we've done that have been successful for us. And I know everyone's cancer journey is different. But I love to hear what's worked for people, because some of it may work for me, some may not. And I can look at it and hear, and sometimes I will get, you know, little tidbits. I'm like, ooh, that makes a lot of sense, and I can implement that into our game plan.
Right.
And so that's, you know, one of the things, you know, in conversations here is that I like to ask people what things have worked for them. What have been some of the, can we explore maybe a little bit of some of the dark times? Is that something you're open to, or?
Yes. Can you pause?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I
Yes.
need to put some eye drops in.
All right, we are back after a quick eye drop break, and and so I asked about some of the dark times.
Once I started treatment and had all this time where I was sequestered in a room, excuse me, at St. Vincent's, I was determined to find out why I got leukemia. It's not a genetic disease. It's not a contagious disease. It's not a tumor-based disease. And as I got into the research,
We can pause at any second too if you need to catch a moment.
what I discovered is that there was a highly disproportionate amount of people from eastern Montana that contracted AML compared to the total number of cases diagnosed in a year in the United States,
Wow.
based on our population. And I can't recall those numbers right now. So then I was on a quest to find out what it is about our environment that's doing this. And I had two people very close to me who also had AML. One about 3 years prior to the time I was diagnosed, who made it through his chemotherapy and went to Seattle for his transplant, contracted pneumonia, and passed away. He was a rancher, ate local beef, his own beef. The other was a young man, 21 years old, made it through his chemotherapy, went into remission. They decided he didn't need a stem cell transplant. About a year later, he contracted viral pneumonia, and he passed away. He was actually in the room before me. I took over his room when I went in. 21 years old. His family owned a ranch. We bought 4-H beef from people everywhere. So then I was on a quest. Okay, what are they feeding their cows around here? My oncologist's daughter was in agricultural studies at MSU at the time, and I relayed this information to her. And I said, do you think there's anything to this theory? Could it be environmental? And so she said she'd pass the information on. Nothing ever came of it. The other thing, I was just angry because I'm healthy. Why did this happen to me? My husband loves vodka, steak. I think the way he eats is horrible. He's active. But his constitution, his genetic makeup, he doesn't affect him at all. So then I thought, well, what else? The only flu shot I ever had in my life was 6 months before they diagnosed me. My daughter is an RN, and she was on us all the time about, you've got to get a flu shot. You've got to get a flu shot. So I relinquished and said, okay, I'll get a flu shot. Just to make you happy, Lacey. Is it possible that the introduction of that, whatever they put in it, to my immune system triggered something in my DNA and created a change? They don't know. They don't know what causes it. So I spent a lot of time, just trying to track down the source. And then I finally realized that it doesn't matter. It might matter for somebody in the future if it's environmental and we can change it.
Yes.
They use bentonite as an emulsifier in cattle feed. Well, it could have some cancerous effects, but I don't know if it manifests in leukemia or not.
Yeah.
But we got 3 cases in one town within 3 years. A town of 9,000 people And there's 10,000 cases a year diagnosed every year in the United States. I believe that's a pretty high percentage.
Yep.
So my quest there was, it's not like I'm going to reverse it, but what can we do to stop this exposure? Was it just something introduced to my immune system that, did I get to a certain age and my immune system said, oh, let's do something different?
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
So I finally gave that up and said, it doesn't matter. I just need to concentrate on getting past it. When I had my intestinal GVHD, I was on tube feeding. They actually put me in the hospital and were about to do a colostomy on me because the surgeon was convinced that I had a ruptured bowel. And the oncologist kept calling from Denver saying, do not do surgery on this woman. Do not do surgery on this woman. It's graft versus host. I mean, he's literally prepping me for surgery, and the oncologist is texting him in all caps, do not do surgery on this woman. So I averted a colostomy. I did have my gallbladder removed. So I thought that was a good compromise. I felt so good after that and had a very big lunch, and life went on, and I got past that. When I started having the osteonecrosis, I didn't know if I'd ever really get back to running, but, I thought I could ride a bike and do all that, and I ended up having to have a knee replacement, which I powered through, I rehabbed, I did it, and I would do walking, and I got to be pretty fine with walking. It was really much more relaxing. I wasn't worried about how far I went and how many minutes. I just went out and walked. I looked at things and talked to people on the phone while I was doing it, There was no deadline or anything like that. Sit down.
Yes.
So we were doing that, going along. And then, I'll be honest, the last 2 months have been extremely dark for me. Because when you can't breathe, you can't do anything. I have the coughing spasms that exhaust me. I miss being at work and being with the people that I work with. I'm very, very fortunate in the whole course of this thing that what I do for my job, I could do remotely on a computer. And I had good support staff that would fill in the gaps. And I can work from home. And particularly now, because we pared down how many businesses we're involved in. And I can work from home, and I need to learn how to do that. But, there are times, it's not like you're suicidal or clinically depressed, but you're thinking, I don't know if I can do this anymore. This is very hard. I'm really tired. But I will tell you, yesterday, they diagnosed my pneumonia on December 17th. And I spent 3 weeks in a recliner or in my bed. Like I said earlier, much to the chagrin of my husband, I did not go to the hospital. And you're just laying there thinking, I can't even go upstairs and get my eye drops. Somebody has to go up and down the stairs for me. I'm afraid to take a shower because I'm not sure I'm strong enough to stand up in there long enough. But you sometimes think, I think I just want to step off a cliff. I'm tired. But the antibiotics are working. The antibiotics they give you are so strong that they make you sicker than the pneumonia does. So you have to get past all of that, Mm-hmm. You can't eat, you get diarrhea, you feel so weak. But I woke up yesterday. I ate 3 meals. I could eat all the food I put on my plate. I always fill my plate for how hungry I feel, and then I can eat about a third of it, But I was able to eat 3 whole meals. And I went up and down the stairs 3 or 4 times by myself, not in succession, but throughout the day, My brother was there enthusiastically doing projects for me, so I had someone around, and it was a huge turning point for me, and I'm okay. I'm going to be okay. I'm not going to jump off a cliff.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, because I think it's, I'm a very positive person, and I focus on, keeping a really, strong mindset. But if I were not to ask that question to you, it would appear that everything is always just rosy and happy, and because, you have this
and Pollyanna,
It's amazing the way, you handle this journey, and it's inspiring. And I think it's even more so when people realize that there are some times that are dark, but there's,
And
hope.
my tendency is to not share those. I just soon thought everything was okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to do this myself, and I need to be able to tell people, I'm having a really hard time today. Could you do this for me?
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're all over it.
Yes. Well, I think, I love the whole wake up, lace up, the way that, you described, how they came about, and when you would walk and do those things. And I really like the sit down. I think sit down and rest is a part of that, because there comes a time where you had part of taking control and being an advocate for yourself is knowing there's a time where I need to sit down and rest too, and they kind of go together.
Yes.
And that's something that I've started to discover more, where I feel like, okay, I think now,
I need to sit down.
Yeah, I have a bike here right off to the side that I use, and there's days I don't, because I've, it's just a little different journey now, where I feel like my body, I'm going, well, I don't want to tax it too much.
You start making choices about where you spend your energy.
Yeah. And
do I take a shower today, or do I eat breakfast?
Yes.
It comes down to that sometimes.
Yes.
I'm going to eat breakfast because nobody's smelling me anyway.
Well, maybe your husband. So this is a good segue then to ask about him. So, how, one thing I've noticed, obviously from walking this journey, is it becomes the whole family's on the journey together.
Yes.
So how's this journey been for your husband? And
I think more difficult for him than me. He, like a lot of men, is a kind of person that wants to fix things. How do we fix this? Why aren't we fixing this? Why aren't you doing your job? Why is she not getting better? And to sit there and watch the havoc that gets wreaked on a person's body and their psyche as they're going through this, and to not be able to do anything about it. Sometimes there's some disconnect in order to protect your heart. On both sides, because some things are hard to talk about. And when you're the person who's ill, and you don't think about how they're looking at it, you get frustrated. And when you're the person who's not ill, and you feel like there's nothing you can do that makes it better, you get frustrated. And all of my children handle it differently based on their personalities. But we're a strong family. I remember after I was diagnosed, my husband sent an email to the kids. And he's not a person who writes mushy things or anything, but he sent it out, said, he always called them children of the corn. It was a joke. Children of the corn. It appears we've been dealt a shit hand. But we are stronger than wild owl poop, and your mother is going to make it through this, and together we will be okay, the gist of this email.
I love it.
And I still have a copy of it pinned to my son's bulletin board. he was a sophomore in high school. So I left. I left in April when he was a sophomore, and I was gone until December of his junior year. He had 3 older sisters, and he was the youngest. And he would spend the weeks, like Monday through Friday, if Kelly wasn't there, by himself, getting himself to school, getting himself to practice, figuring out how to eat, figuring out how to accept food from people, and entertaining their conversation. When he called me one time, he said, "I wish they'd just drop it off the door and ring the doorbell. I want to talk to him." I said, "Don't. You've got to talk to these people." But it was quite truly one of the best things that happened to him, too. Because he learned how to become independent. He had always been coddled by 3 sisters, always looking out for him, always taking care of him. He learned how to do dishes. He learned how to do laundry. He learned how to get to where he needed to be on time, get to where he needed to be when he needed to be there. Kelly would run back and forth from Denver and make games, or he'd stay for a week and take care of our, checking on the businesses. The dynamics are just quite amazing. My daughter, who's a nurse, of course, is on me all the time. She every minute. Send me your lab results. She's right there all the time. It's made us stronger, closer, but it's still a strain. There's always a strain.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of my lesson too, is to just let them know how I feel and let them feel how they feel and respond how they respond and be okay with it.
I need to learn that one a little more, to let them feel how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes
you need to be like I feel like.
Yeah.
And they have no idea how you feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, even if you know in your heart that I'm going to be okay, they don't know that.
Yeah.
They don't feel it.
Yeah.
They're looking at you going, "You look like you're going to die."
Yeah.
And so that's why he was so upset when I wouldn't go to the hospital. I'm laying there in the recliner and I can't move, but I'm not going to the hospital.
Yeah.
I'm okay. I know I'm going to live through this.
Yeah.
But he's looking at me thinking, she might die here in this chair.
Are those conversations and topics, death? Is it something you speak about with your husband or your kids?
Well, this is the closest I've ever felt to it, and I'm definitely ready to make those things known. I mean, they all know how I feel.
Yeah.
But
well, I asked because there was multiple inspirations for this project. The time machine came from something my boy Gideon said that he asked me one night if he asked if daddies leave, and I said, well, sometimes, and I explained to him some scenarios, and because he asked me if mine did, and so yes, and he told me, well, Dad, I'm gonna build a time machine. That way I can, if anything ever happens to you, I can come back and see you whenever I want. And so, I'm a storyteller, so I ended up telling a story that had to do with that, and it kind of sat there as a story that was very special to me. And then a little later on in the journey, I had contacted a patient that had 3 kids and was going through the journey, and we had one conversation on the phone, and in that conversation, she had mentioned that we were in a similar situation, having kids, and so I asked about her husband, how he was doing, and she was like, he's done really great. I've passed some things on to him to do that way of, her outlook wasn't good, and she's passed since, and she knew that was coming, and so she said, I've passed on some things for him, to do that way when I'm gone, like breakfast and getting the kids ready, and
The
so
routine. So
the
he knows.
routines, yeah. And one of the, it came up was, do you talk about that? And she goes, I'd like to, but, he's not able to have that conversation, and really hit me how there might be some things that she really, wanted to say, and things that he would want to hear, but maybe couldn't at that moment. And that maybe if he was just a fly on the wall, he could
Or
receive it
third party.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it was, preserved for him. And, after that conversation, it was actually led to a kind of a dark moment for me, that, just really feeling, her position, how lucky I was that I have a chance, and that,
Yes.
that she didn't. And, I started to kind of have a little spiral for, which is rare for me and only happened twice on this journey. But it was because I had empathy for her, and then I allowed myself to go, oh,
This might happen to me.
maybe you should allow yourself to feel this way. And it was a short time, but I stopped it, and I was like, no, I'm not gonna spiral down here. It's not fair to my wife, it's not fair to my kids, and it does no good.
Yeah.
But out of that, I thought I would love to be able, because I told her, we talked about journaling, and I said, well, I don't journal, but I tell stories, and so that's really my way of journaling. And so it's been helpful for me to be able to know that if my time is short, that my kids will be able to hear me as an adult, talking as an adult. So I can't tell them things at 5 years old that they need to be 15 or 20 to hear.
Here, right.
And so so I thought, she said, well, I can't do that, I'm not a storyteller. And she had told me these wonderful stories on the phone, and that's when really the concept for this came together. I thought, well, if we can have these conversations like I was having on the phone with her, that it could be, her journey, her cancer journey, and those some thoughts in a time machine that her children and could visit in the future. And we never got that opportunity, but that was the catalyst for what we're doing now. And there's many levels of where I think it have value, but that's one of them.
I agree.
Because sometimes it's easier to say those things
To the camera.
yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so
I mean, some of the things I've shared here, I'm sure everyone's going to go, oh my God, I can't believe you've talked about that. But I'm not as good at speaking my heart, but I can definitely write it. In fact, I just ordered a book that's called Things You Need to Know When I'm Gone.
Mm.
And, I don't expect to be gone tomorrow,
Yeah.
but I'm going to start filling it out.
Yeah.
There's always the logistical things, these are our bank account numbers and the
Yes,
passwords and all
yes.
that, but there's other things,
Yes.
things you need to know. And if you can do that at all, in whatever form, whether it's in a blog or a video of yourself that you record that you can be shared with your children or loved ones later, or writing it down. Carrying Bridge saved my sanity while I was doing my chemotherapy and the whole process, because I was able to relay to people what was going on and how I felt and tie it into like a life lesson. And then it relieved the burden from my family of having to explain to everybody, how's your mom doing?
Yes.
So taxing.
Yes.
What do they say?
Yes.
Every time you see them, how's your mom doing?
Yes.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yes.
So my daughter, who was the RN, set that up for me, and it took off. It's like, people have blogs. That was my blog, and I did it for about 4 or 5 years, and I finally was getting better, and I'm thinking, I don't want to hear about me anymore, So I quit. And, did the, oh yeah, everything's great, and you'd talk to people close to you and you had issues. And then when I started getting into this lung thing, I thought, I think I'll go back to my Caring Bridge. and start sharing that way again, so people quit asking my kids and asking my husband. And my site had shut down because it had been inactive, and I had some trouble with trying to get it set up, so I just put out a Facebook post. I don't do that. I don't really post anything on Facebook. I just look at everybody else's pictures.
Yes.
But I put one out that was kind of a summary of what was going on. And then I was kind of embarrassed, and I thought, I really don't like this kind of stuff. But the response I got from people was so uplifting, to know that so many people were out there praying for me and thinking of me and offering help. And you've got to share that so that they can help you. Like I said, we're denying people a gift if we don't allow them to show acts of kindness, compassion, service. I mean, those are gifts that people give to one another, and you have to open up and let that happen. You don't have to tell them everything, but you do have to open up and let it happen.
I think there's great wisdom in that.
So I'm gonna go. I am gonna get my Caring Bridge things set back up,
Yes.
and I love to write, and
Caring Bridge has been great for us, and Cassidy is the one that does the Caring Bridge, and it's great because it is kind of a journal too. So if you,
I
looking
saved all
back,
mine. I would hope I want to write a book with it, my entries,
which is
or do some kind of thing.
yes. Well, I've had people ask, "Well, have you journaled?" And I'm like, I don't. And I do mine through storytelling, but I realized the Caring Bridge becomes it. And one of the practical things about the Caring Bridge is, people are so kind and they want to know, but
They
when
don't know
they
what to
ask you, and when they do, then you have to repeat the same story
exactly
100 times a day.
That was my whole goal.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell this 100 times, and my kids and my husband certainly don't want to. I don't want them to be burdened
Yes.
with that.
Yes.
And my daughter set it up
a great
initially thinking that she would make the entries. I said, I feel okay. I can do that. I can sit here and type all day, I
Yeah.
can do this. So it got to be, we had a lot of fun with it. I had some great stories and, weird things that happen, when
Yes.
you're stuck in a hospital, and incorporate a scripture with it or some kind of life lesson. And I got to missing it. I just got so busy after I started
Yes.
feeling better, and sit down.
Yes, that's good. That's really good. Yes. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I appreciate this conversation. There's so much wisdom and so much value in it. Are there any things that maybe you've thought would be beneficial to those that are on this journey that we haven't mentioned? I think we covered quite a bit.
I truly believe you just find someone or be your own best advocate. Don't be afraid to question treatments. But have faith in the people who are educated to do it. Surround yourself with positive people. Have faith. And don't get caught in the spiral.
That's good. I had a friend that said also, count the things you're grateful for.
Oh, every day.
And so, are there some? So what she goes, always know there's three. Have at least three things you're grateful for. So the list is many, but could you give us maybe three things that you're grateful for? Narrow it down out of the
On a daily basis, or just overall?
Just overall.
I got to see all my kids graduate from college. I got to see all my children get married. I got to see two of my grandchildren be born and enjoy it. The oldest is 3, and the second one was born on my birthday. She will be 1 in March. So many things that I didn't know if they were going to happen.
Yeah.
I didn't even know if I was going to make it to my son's graduation.
Yeah.
And
did you set goals for yourself, or like how long you would?
not really. I just kept going.
For me,
I didn't really see an end. I never really saw an end
let me
until recently.
phrase that. Was there was there did you ever do a negotiation kind of in your head of going, well, if I had this thought.
Yeah.
I had this thought. I thought, what would I do? Because when the diagnosis came, I was told live in the present. We're going to do some more testing, and there was some things in what we were looking at that also mirrored somebody else that had a diagnosis similar, and they were given months. And so in my head we didn't know, but I knew. I positioned myself when I sat down with our oncologist that in my mind I was prepared for them to say you have 2 months, and as we discussed it and the treatment possibilities and then transplant and what could happen, but the dangers of the transplant.
Yes.
As we were discussing, those things, I had this thought of, well, this could give me 20 years, but I mean, I may die in that transplant, and would I take, because would I take, would I take 2 years guaranteed over the transplant now and the chance of 20? And I had to think through that in my head. Or I didn't have to, I just did. And now that I'm coming up on two years,
you're questioning it again.
Well, there was a moment there that I was like, I would take 2 years, because in that time I could speak with my kids and I could do certain things. 2 years would give me, and that it was
gone.
so fast.
They're gone.
That, I'm a little bit of I'm a high risk taker, so I'm sure I would have rolled the dice on the 20 years or more. But it was interesting, I guess. I haven't talked, with other, others that are on the cancer journey about that, because there's been some mental kind of,
avoidance?
Well, I would say more like some games of, not games, but some thoughts of going, if this is my choice, would I take a guaranteed 2 years or a 50-50 chance at 20 or, so it was interesting that I just have never shared that I've had those kind of conversations with myself.
All the blood cancers are so different, and the immediacy of treatment is different based on your diagnosis. I really didn't even have time to think about it. I mean, they had to cure the leukemia. Yeah. And once they cured the leukemia, it was a transplant or, it's just not going to go away. So we just busted through that. But here I am, almost 10 years later. Yes. And when they started talking about a lung transplant, I thought, I'm 58 years old. And a lung transplant's good for about 5 years. Do I take those lungs from somebody who's 22 and needs them? And then have a horrible 5 years after a lung transplant? I mean, really, there's an ethical question for me there. Or am I going to be successful in the lung transplant and have 5 great years where I can breathe and go for a walk and not wear this thing and talk without coughing, but a lung transplant's going to hurt. They do it like open heart surgery. There's going to be a lot more physical pain involved with that. There was not a lot of physical pain involved with leukemia. I mean, there were some side effects and things, but not real physical pain. So that's a big question. And especially when I was not doing so well with a pneumonia, and I thought, I don't know if I can do this. But like I said, today I feel like I can. Yeah. So we'll see what they say. Yes. And we'll see what more than one person says. Yes. And then we'll try to make a calculated judgment about what to do next.
Well, what I can say after hearing that is, the contemplating 5 more years. When I look at the 9 years of your journey
that I have had,
and what you've done and the amount of people you've impacted,
if I were you, I'd take the 20.
Yes,
I would.
Yeah. Well,
because you seem to have the same kind of tenacious mindset.
Yeah. Yes, I prepared myself that each day could be my last. And so I'm okay with that. My hope is to be here to see my kids graduate, get married, all of those things. I want to see all of that. But I'm very,
You also have to be realistic.
yeah. And I've, come to terms really quickly on that. It was not too hard for me to, God is sovereign, and,
Yes.
and my days are numbered according to
When
His
He's
will.
ready, right?
So what I focus on is the time I have to do the things.
And when that time
know.
comes, you will be inspired.
Yeah.
You will know.
Yeah. So I'm a fighter. I'm going to fight for every moment, and I'm unashamed of that because
We had the discussion about fight, and I don't think there's anything wrong with.
Yeah.
It is a battle.
Yeah.
My hashtag is Wooloo Warrior.
Yeah. Yeah. In the conversation.
I am a Spartan.
Yes.
I have scars,
Yes.
but I wield my sword, and I will continue
Yes.
to battle.
I love that. And for the listeners, the conversation we had was, there was an article I'd seen that, not to say fight, is associated with cancer because it was, I think, a Huffington Post article, and it described how it wasn't fair to do that to a cancer patient because, what if they died? Is it their fault they didn't fight hard enough, or maybe they didn't choose it? And I,
Every fight has a winner and a loser.
yeah.
Doesn't make it wrong to fight.
Yes, and that's why in that conversation I had with with Jill was her name, that where I spiraled, I had put that, we were talking about that article. That's how I connected with her, because I saw this article, I saw people posting on it, and it was for the first time for me that I realized that there are people on this journey that are offended when you say fight, and I was unaware of it. And I had been, when we go to our infusions, we call it Fight Week, and we started recreating a walkout fight every single time, and we embraced that. And so I really felt for her, knowing what made me spiral was think she doesn't, no matter how hard she fights, she knew that her time was short, that there was, she said there will be a cure for this, but not in my lifetime. And so I felt that, and then I felt for the people that were offended, and I started to kind of spiral a little bit, and that's when I realized, no, God made me a fighter, and everyone has their own journey and how they approach it. Some people, I think, even thinking about fighting can be detrimental to them because maybe their makeup, they need to sit down and rest. And to me, that's just how I'm made up. So I've come to grips with that, and I'm a fighter, and I'm going to fight, and that for every moment I have, because that's how I'm wired, and I want to be here for every moment I have with my kids. And whether it's 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, 20 years, I'm going to live those the same. I'm not going to waste time in fear and anxiety and worry.
Right.
Because how tragic if you have 2 weeks left
That
and you spend it that way. But even more tragic, what if I have 20 and I spend it in fear, worry, and anxiety?
Exactly.
So I've made that decision that I'm going to embrace this, and we're going to just fight, and we're going to go through it. And life is a gift. Every moment's a gift. I don't deserve what I have. I don't deserve my wife, my kids. It's a beautiful life, and I embrace every moment, and I'm going to continue to fight. And I want you to know that you are a warrior. You're a fighter, and I'm so inspired by you, and so inspired by Wake Up, Lace Up, and all the people you've helped, including my family. So I'd love to partner and fight together in any way we can, because the impact that you've had on people, including us, has been huge. And so there's many reasons why you're here, but I know that's one of them, because you don't have a roadmap, but then you have Rosa and then Cindy that have come and said, hey, this is hard, we can help, let's do this and help these people. So you are a Spartan warrior.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
I think the key is to find the balance between fighting and sitting down, and embrace both.
Yes. Sometimes you have to sit and rest so you can fight again.
Exactly.
And I had to learn that.
Yes. And the other thing that's constantly being beaten into my head is that I'm really not in charge. I can do whatever I think I can do, but I'm really not in charge.
Yeah. It's a very freeing moment.
Yes, it is.
When I had that moment where I realized that, then it took a big burden off my shoulders. And I realized, okay, I'm not in charge. What can I do that's in my control?
Exactly.
And what can I contribute
Yes.
to this world, to my wife, to my family, to my friends, to my neighbors? And what can I contribute while I'm here? What is my verse to contribute?
Yeah.
So, well, thank you so much for coming. Is there anything else you feel like you'd like to?
I feel like we've
Okay.
bared our souls.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
And
I can't tell you how much we appreciate this. Any word we can get out to folks to let them know what we do and how we can help them, and if they can help us in any way too.
And that date again is March 7th
of 2020
and that's
in Miles City at the Town and Country Club.
excellent. Well, Cindy, thank you so much for coming on. Love you, and I'm excited for the event. And with that, we'll end it.
Thank you.
You bet.